Hello, I am Anawultos, and here I am, putting in my own opinion or sort of criticism on this article that I found on the Huffington Post. Now, this article isn't that recent, however, it was updated a bit more recently. Now, before I continue, this article was written by this fellow over here. Before I continue, let me just say that this is meant as a form of criticism that is not in a malignant sense. Please, if you also feel the need to criticize this article, do not go about doing it in a malignant sense. I believe that criticism should be done in a very clear way where it's obvious what you're criticizing, but you should also have respect for the people that you're criticizing and treat everyone in a kind and polite manner. Okay, so now that being said, let's go into the article. Haters of hate crime laws. Now, this article is about hate crime laws, and for those of you who do not know about what hate crime laws are, let me just show to you what hate crimes are. And according to the FBI, because of course this is a Huffington Post article, so it's from the United States, so the FBI should of course be the authority on what exactly is being said here. A hate crime is a traditional offense like murder, arson, or vandalism, which means by traditional offense, they mean something that is normally considered a crime, with an added element of bias. For the purpose of collecting statistics, the FBI has defined a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. Hate itself is not a crime, and the FBI is mindful of protecting freedom of speech and other civil liberties. Very good. So that is essentially what a hate crime is, according to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the United States of America. And of course, the Huffington Post is in the United States of America. So I assume that this is probably the position that they're going to take. They're probably going to speak about this from an American's perspective. Now, if I'm wrong, then I'm sure someone might correct me, and if even no one does correct me, then I really feel ashamed for making such a bad assumption. So anyway, let's get into the article itself. What's up with people who oppose hate crime laws? Okay. It's a very interesting question. How can you be against laws that protect people from being targeted because of their race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, disabilities, sexual orientation, or gender identity? Yep, I think that's a pretty comprehensive list. I don't know if it's race, religion, disability. Let me just double check. Race. Okay, it's not exactly the same, but I know that they mean the same thing. How can you be against laws that protect people? Well, that of course is the opening paragraph, so I'm not going to make too much commentary there yet. I'm going to see what this person's actual position is on this viewpoint. Well, here's how. Some people oppose hate crime laws because they say that the laws are unnecessary and redundant. Now, the reason they would say that, in my opinion, is that, as it says on the FBI definition here, a hate crime is a traditional offense, such as murder, arson, or vandalism, as in it is something that is already against the law, and you're just adding the additional element of bias, and somehow that makes it worse, that you maybe murdered and raped someone. You murdered and raped them because you don't like the color of their skin or something. That somehow makes the crime any worse. And as I'm going to see here, this person is going to take a sort of a trying to take both sides of the issue, even though they don't really add up. They say that we already have laws against assault and murder, so we don't need laws against assault and murder motivated by hate. And yes, that is the position, that if murder is already illegal, then why do we need to add an extra condition for it to be illegal if it's already illegal in all circumstances? They say that, but they're wrong. That's correct. They are wrong, is what the author is saying, and I hope that we are going to find out why exactly it is wrong. The purpose of laws is to deter and punish antisocial behavior, behavior that violates the rights of citizens. Now, I don't know where this person got this definition for what the purpose of laws is, and some people might have read over that and skipped on to the next portion, but I have to say that this is actually very important. Whenever someone defines something in an article, especially if it is political, you always have to analyze what exactly they're defining and how exactly they're defining it. So here it is. The purpose of laws is to deter and punish antisocial behavior. And then they qualify that as behavior. Well, this person qualifies that as behavior that violates the rights of citizens. So the question here is it antisocial behavior that violates the rights of citizens, or is it the violation of the rights of citizens that is antisocial behavior? Or are these two things separate, insinuating that antisocial behavior and the violation of the rights of citizens is something that the law is supposed to deter and punish? And another important question here is, what is the definition of antisocial behavior in this context? Because if you were to go with the general definitions of antisocial behavior, you might be saying that the law is there to deter and punish introverts, maybe, or the law is there to deter and punish people who don't like being around other people, even if they don't necessarily hate those other people. So the definition is very vague and ambiguous in context, and therefore I think that there is a form of slippery slope here because of the vagueness of a definition. And that's how you get a slippery slope. You get to a point where someone is defining something, but they're being vague about it. Well, but he is being vague about it because they is plural and someone is singular, so I have to be grammatically correct here. Someone is defining something and he is being very irregular with the definition, something that's very undefined, in a sense that it's essentially a non-definition, and that leads to a slippery slope where, depending on how you interpret it, you can go to maybe the simple thing where you're simply trying to deter and punish things that violate the rights of citizens, or on the other extreme, you deter and punish introverts, which some would say is rather bigoted. But another thing that's important here is the fact that this is used as a definition for the purpose of laws. Now, of course, in the United States, there are certain documents that tell us what the laws are and perhaps to some degree what the laws are supposed to do. And in the United States, you have the 4 natural laws of the United States, or the 4 organic laws, which are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance, and the United States Constitution, along with its various amendments. Now, I can 100% assure you, well, or more accurately, I say, I bet you that none of those 4 documents talks about antisocial behavior. And even if you go into the Federalist Papers, which were written by some of the founders of the United States talking about how the country should be run and various political things, those things also don't talk about antisocial behavior. And if you go into the various constitutions of the various, all 50 states of the United States, I bet you, now I haven't read these all, but I'm pretty sure none of them would talk about antisocial behavior. So if I am giving the good doctor a benefit of a doubt here, I would have to say that antisocial behavior is qualified as behavior that violates the rights of citizens, and therefore the doctor is saying that behavior that violates the rights of citizens is antisocial behavior, which I don't know if that's necessarily true either. So I'm forced to go with the main sentence here, that the purpose of laws is to deter and punish antisocial behavior, and based on the legal basis of this, even if I include the Magna Carta, I have to say that this is, from a legal standpoint, incorrect. And that this as a premise fails, at least in my perspective. Anyway, let's move on to the next sentence. Hate crime laws impose additional penalties for crimes motivated by hate, and therein lies the deterrence. Now, pay attention to this. Hate crime laws impose additional penalties for crimes motivated by hate. Therefore, the additional penalty is put in there because of the hate. That is essentially what is additionally being penalized, is the hate. I would venture to say that most haters who assault or murder people out of hatred for the group they belong to would not commit the crimes of assault or murder to steal a wallet. Okay. Assault or murder out of hatred is... the offer is implying that... the haters out there, the people that hate the various races, ethnicities, nationalities, religions, etc., that their motivation is their hate, and that their motivation is not monetary gain. And I would have to say that that is correct in a sense, but I still think that just as hate is wrong, that, let's say, greed is wrong as well. But should there be greed crimes then for people who do crimes motivated for personal gain? Should there be pride crimes for people who are, all high and mighty and they commit the crimes? It's one of those things. Why is hate singled out here as that one definitive thing that we should disapprove of, and not other things like greed? Because greed is pretty bad as well. Okay, they're not muggers or thieves intent on stealing something of monetary value from another human being. Now, what I have to say here is that the fact remains that in the assault or murder, they assaulted that person to a certain degree, or they murdered that person. And the fact that they hate or don't hate that person doesn't objectively change how much they assaulted that person. Okay. They don't care about your wallet. They want to beat the crap out of you or kill you because you're black or Islamic or gay or transgender, or any of the other things mentioned, such as, okay, I'm not going to get snarky here. I was about to get really snarky, but no, I'm going to say fair point. that they do have motivations, but as an old saying goes, justice is blind. The fact, the thing that legal courts are supposed to worry about isn't what motivates people to commit crimes. It is rather the crime itself. How was the law violated here? Now, of course, if hate crime is on the books, then they do have to worry about such things. But generally speaking, historically, a lot of philosophers have said that it really should be more the society and the community that should instill people with the desire not to hate each other. That it isn't the government's job to do these things. And that is a position that the opponents of hate crimes as being laws are coming from. That this isn't the government's job. This should be something that people have their individual responsibility, and it's a very classically liberal position to hold, that the government shouldn't be meddling in things that it shouldn't be meddling in, such as the motivations for crimes. But anyway, okay. They don't know you, but they don't like the group you belong to, so they want to harm you or even kill you. Their violent crime is not a means to an end, such as getting your wallet, but an end in and of itself, namely getting you. I added the such as because the way I speak, it made more sense to me. But okay, so they're saying that the motivation matters, is what this person says, and that is where we differ. I say that the motivation doesn't matter, that crime is a crime is a crime. The judge shouldn't have to worry about why someone murdered someone. What matters is that the person did murder them and that it is unjustifiable. Okay. If they are deterred from acting out of their hatred, they are unlikely to ever engage in a violent criminal act at all. So the author here is making the claim that the existence of hate crimes as crimes that in some cases are more severe than regular crimes of the same objective physical damage. The existence of these crimes is a deterrent. It deters people not necessarily from committing crimes, but rather from being hateful. Because you could be saying here that the fact that these things are considered crimes can in itself be a deterrent for the crime. That if there is a severe punishment for assault and murder, that people are less likely to commit assault and murder, and that this would be easier to do rather than having to pinpoint each and every different motivation for a crime, because then our legal code becomes really long, and I think most people don't want their legal code to be super long, because that is really annoying to have a really long legal code, because then you have to worry about all these different things that the government is spending their time on, they're wasting taxpayer money on, and a lot of people don't like that. And I'm one of those people that doesn't like the fact that we have all these different laws that would be unnecessary if we simply focused on the fact that a crime was committed, it was unjustifiable, therefore here's the kinds of punishment that we can give for the crime. Is there going to be mercy, What does the jury say? And there we are. Easy, simple, a speedy trial, and you don't have to worry about establishing intent. Well, yeah. Well, not the kind of intent is what I mean, not whether there was criminal intent, because then that actually matters. But the type of intent is irrelevant. What matters is whether or not there was intent. Okay. Some people who say hate crime laws are unnecessary or redundant actually go so far as to deny that there even is such a thing as a hate crime. Okay, here we go. Here's a quote. Missouri State Republican Paul Kurtman, or Kurtman, depending on which language you speak, a Republican. Oh, wait, no, state representative, sorry. Read the rep, said Republican. State Representative Paul Kurtman, a Republican, is one of these people. Earlier this year, he said, this is not really such a thing. There is not really such a thing as a hate crime. Crime is crime, right? Oh, I think I'm accidentally having a parallel here. Equality under the law. And I think that's actually a very good thing. Now, of course, the first clause, sure, people commit crimes motivated by hate. However, you should rise above the hate and just judge the crime for what it is, and treat everyone equally under the law, regardless of their opinions. And that is the principle of the U.S. legal system and the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, that people should be treated equally under the law, regardless of what their opinion is and what the motivation is. People like Mr. Kurtman deny the undeniable. They deny reality. And I think this is really taking it a lot farther than it is, because in context, he says there is not really such a thing as a hate crime. And what, to me, I read that as him speaking in a sense that, and then the fact that he says after that crime is crime, right, and then equality under the law, means that he isn't denying the fact that people hate each other. What he's rather denying is the hypothesis of a hate crime, in the sense that there shouldn't be a thing as a hate crime. He is speaking of there isn't. He's actually not speaking of something being there, but rather how things should be. And he's saying that those people who acknowledge the existence of hate crimes are wrong because they distinguish between different crimes and imply that there is not equality under the law. That is what I think Kurtman is saying here. Now, I might be taking him out of context a bit, so I'm going to concede the point. Sure, what if he is actually literally denying the fact that people commit crime motivated by hate? Here's the truth. Tying James Byrd Jr. to the back of a pickup truck and dragging him for 3 miles because he was black, that was a hate crime. Tying Matthew Shepard to a post and then torturing him and murdering him because he was gay, that was a hate crime too. It's also a hate crime to murder another human being because they were born male or are presenting as, and born male but are presenting as a woman. Now, here's where I think the disconnect is occurring here, because Paul Kurtman here is saying that he's saying that the hate doesn't matter and that it simply is a crime. He's saying that just because James Byrd Jr. got tied to the back of a pickup truck and dragged for 3 miles because he was black doesn't mean that someone else who got tied to the back of a pickup truck and dragged for 3 miles for a non-hate related reason gets less protection under the law. He's saying that they're all equal, and the way the author is viewing it is as if he's pulling down something that's higher, in the sense that he is detracting from the severity of a crime, but what he is in fact doing is he is having a premise of the equality of crime, and from a perspective of equality of crime, establishing a hate crime can either be seen as putting up a crime in importance or devaluing all other crimes of the same type, in the sense that the perpetrators of both the hate crime and the non-hate crime should be punished equally, and that just because someone committed a crime that was not motivated by hate, that person shouldn't be punished as severely as the person that committed a crime that was motivated by hate, and the person that committed a crime that was motivated by hate shouldn't be punished more severely than the person who committed the same exact objective crime, with the simple difference that it wasn't motivated by hate. That is what he is saying, that by putting a crime above another crime, you are essentially doing the same as putting another crime below it, by creating an order of priority or severity of crimes. You are both valuing one crime up and devaluing another crime down, and that is the problem that what Paul Kurtman seems to be having here, because he says equality under the law. He's saying that it is unlawful to punish someone more for the same crime, or to punish someone less for the same crime, simply because of the motivations for the crime. And by punishing someone more or less, I'm not talking about what the judge or the jury decides that the punishment should be, but rather what the limits to the punishment are. For example, there is a maximum amount of punishment for specific crimes, and people that commit hate crimes have that maximum increased, which of course means that the maximum for this kind of crime for everyone who hasn't committed a hate crime is lower than for those who have committed a hate crime. So what the representative is saying is that this is inconsistent and that there should be equality. But of course, you as an author, you view that differently, saying that yes, this should be something that is more severely punished. And that is the disconnect. That is a disagreement. The disagreement between equality and what some people like to call the progressive stack. But that's another story. He's saying that it is unegalitarian and illiberal to punish people more or less, to limit the kinds of punishment for more or less for the same kinds of crimes. Okay, let's actually move on, because I don't want to say the same thing 10 different ways. Okay. It's also a hate crime to murder another human being because they were born male, but okay. And again, nobody's saying in this debate that these things aren't crimes. They're just saying that everyone should be judged equally under the law. That's what a mob did to Dwayne Jones, a gay Jamaican teenager who attended a party dressed as a woman. When it was discovered that Dwayne was born male, a mob descended upon him, beat him, stabbed him, shot him, and ran him over with a car. Now, beating him, stabbing him, shooting him, and running him over, those are all crimes. And nobody's saying that they aren't crimes. Those are just a few examples of hate crimes. Would they change the mind of Mr. Kurtman or people like him who say that hate crimes don't exist? And again, I'm not sure if Mr. Kurtman was saying that hate crimes don't exist. He's saying that from a legal perspective, they shouldn't exist. That's my stand on what he's trying to say there. I doubt it. Haters of hate crime laws are pretty hard to reach. Well, you've reached me just now. So, thank you very much for attempting to reach out. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to reach out to other people as well. Consider the fact that some people who oppose hate crime laws actually say that they do so in defense of freedom. Equality under the law, mate. That's what he's saying. Right. Do I detect some sarcasm? Hey, they say that hate crime laws threaten freedom of speech and religion, and it's got to be said that you read things from certain religions, and they do oppose certain things. That's got to be said. They say that, but they're wrong. You have a perfect right under the Constitution of the United States to hate all you want. Okay. Then why is there an additional punishment for it being a crime done because of hate? Why is there an additional punishment if you're saying that you have a right to hate? So hating is only a crime when it's with another crime? Do we have other crimes like that as well? That it's a crime to steal, but only if you murder as well. Imagine that. It just seems very inconsistent that you would condemn something if it is in conjunction with something else. And the thing that you're condemning, you are condemning even when it isn't in conjunction with something else, but you're saying that it should be legally condemned when it is in conjunction with something else. But that it shouldn't be condemned when it isn't in conjunction, but in a moral sense, it should be condemned in both senses. I think that's a bit inconsistent, to be honest. Consider the fact... Okay, here we go. Let me get back on track. Okay. You just can't act on your hate. You can't threaten them, harass them, stalk them, beat them up, or kill them because you hate them. But apparently you can be punished more if you hate them. So it is a subcrime. So technically, if hate crimes exist, it technically is semi-illegal. You can also believe that certain people are sinful and deserve to go to hell because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. That's your right, and God bless you for it. That's right. You simply just approved it, unless you're being sarcastic. Yes, you can believe that gay and transgender people are perverts and sinners, and you can take private delight in the belief that they will be punished for eternity. You just can't threaten, harass, stalk, beat up, or kill them because you think they're perverts and sinners who are going to hell. Sorry, it must be very frustrating, but that is the behavior that hate crime laws are designed to deter and punish. Now, on a tangent here, this person obviously has an issue with Christianity. And I have to say that I have never met a Christian who has said, now I have heard that there are some people out there that do this, but I don't think it's as common as you think it is, that they say that you go to hell simply if you're a gay. And because I have actually studied some theology, and I have to say that from a theological standpoint, okay, for those of you who don't like theology, who don't like me talking about religion, well, bear with it, because maybe it may enrich your understanding of a religious viewpoint. From a theological standpoint, sin is something that everyone commits, and from a Christian perspective, reading it in the Bible, because I have read the Bible, a sin is... hate is in itself a sin if you are hating another human being, because human beings are made in the image of God. So the people who are the haters here are obviously theologically incorrect in that sense. In addition to that, from a theological standpoint, every human being besides Jesus is a sinner, therefore, and every sin is punishable by death. Therefore, they're not saying that they are going to hell because they're sinners. I got mixed up. They're not saying that they're going to hell simply because they're gay or transgender. They're saying that they're going to hell because they have committed a sin, which, as people saying this, they would also have to acknowledge that they may have lied, cheated, hated another person sometime in their life, broken the speed limit even, and that in itself is punishable by hell. But from a Christian standpoint, any of these things, including homosexuality and murder and genocide, can be forgiven by God. So anyone, if you ever meet a Christian who says that all gay people go to hell, I would say that best way to deal with that is to open up a Bible and to show them in the Bible where they're being inconsistent theologically. Unless they reject the Bible, in which case they're being 100% inconsistent, because where do you get your theology from if it's not from the Bible? But that may have been extremely controversial this last few minutes that I was talking. Anyway, let's move on before we get too bogged down in this. Lately, a lot of opposition to hate crime laws is directed at the fact that these laws protect people from being victimized because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. The people who oppose these laws don't want gay or transgender people to be protected as a minority. They say they don't deserve protection. They say that they're not a real minority like blacks or Hispanics. And here we go. Here's the straw man. We're about to see a straw man. No, they are simply perverts and sinners who engage in behavior that all moral, God-fearing people should hate and condemn. Now, it's important that, again, that these supposed moral and God-fearing people, to be consistent, they should hate the act and not the person, to be consistent in the Bible. Otherwise, they're being very inconsistent, and I recommend that you find these people and that you point it out to them, so that they may learn better theology and become more consistent. Okay, and I think this is the reason I think this is a straw man is not because it characterizes Christians in that manner, because I know that there are some people who are professing Christians who actually believe this stuff. But the reason it's a straw man is because the arguments that I have seen against hate crimes generally do not go like that. Not against hate crimes, but against categorizing transgender and homosexuality as not a minority. These people generally say that the reason they categorize that as not a minority is because these are things that are in the control of the individuals. Now, whether or not you believe that, if you go from that, not pretext, my mind just blanked out on the proper word. Not preface, it's... Okay, conclusion and... Anyway, if you go from that reasoning, then they would be correct in saying that it is not, since it is something that that person is in control of, then it wouldn't really be that much of a minority. But of course, these people are against hate crime laws in the first place, so why would they be making this distinction in the first place? So this actually is a bigger straw man than I originally realized, because it says a lot of the opposition to hate crime laws is directed at the fact that these laws protect people from being victimized because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And that in itself is a straw man in itself, because the main opposition is, like the representative earlier said, that it is an unequal way to treat people, and that they want equality and liberty. And that is the main argument. Now, of course, there are probably some people that make this argument as well. There's bound to be someone, and I'm sure of that. But for the most part, that is not what the top people that are doing the debates are arguing. Of course, being homosexual is not a behavior. And premise, that was the word I was looking for. That is the other disconnect, that you have different premises as to homosexuality. Now, the reason they say that homosexuality is something that people control is because they look at people who say that I was previously straight, but now I'm gay, or say that I was previously gay, but now I'm straight, or say that I was straight, then gay, now straight, or gay, then straight, now gay, and people who, as examples, have somehow claimed to have changed their sexuality. And whether all homosexual people are like that is another question, but they look at people who are like that, who actually claim to have changed their sexuality, and that really goes against lumping all homosexuals together as people who are born that way, because some of them explicitly claim that that is not the case. Okay, and being transgender is not a behavior any more than being a cisgender man or woman is. And again, there are people that explicitly say the opposite, who are transgender. And that really undermines your argument that I'm not saying that this is necessarily true for all transgenders or homosexuals. I'm saying that there are some who do say that they made a choice And your argument undermines that choice and completely ignores it and delegitimizes it. And that is a serious issue that I'm taking with this. But whether or not you approve of homosexuality or transgenderness is not really the issue here. It is these people objectively say, well, it is subjective because it is an opinion, but to reject all opinions would then be to reject all sources of information, which would then be to object all reality, all truth, etc. And therefore you should really be careful with how you deal with opinions, because if you say that all opinions don't matter, then nothing matters, and then you go down a really weird and inconsistent path. But so much, once again, for the incontrovertible facts that are very controvertible by some homosexuals and transgender individuals who do claim to controvert it. There you go. And this is another problem, going on another tangent, that I have with collectivism, that they always lump people in a box. That's essentially what collectivism is. You lump people together and you give them a stereotype, such as saying that all homosexuals are homosexuals because it's in their genes. When people there, some of them say, no, that's not true for me, and you end up delegitimizing people's individuality and their opinions, because they have their own opinions. They have their free speech, their opinions, and I think that it's important to at least listen to their opinions before you simply throw them in the dustbins of history. As an example of what I'm talking about, check out Dr. Gagnon's or Gagnon's. I don't actually know the origin of the word, therefore I'm not 100% sure as to its pronunciation. 25 reasons to oppose hate crime legislation. Thank you very much. The doctor is an associate professor of New Testament at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. Interesting. He believes that it is immoral to engage in homosexual sex. He bases this belief on the Bible. And I do have to say that reading the Bible, that is in the Bible. So if he's going to be consistent and biblical, that is the position that he has to take. As I noted, hate crime laws protect people from being victimized based on their belonging to a number of different groups, but the only groups that Dr. Gagnon or Gagnon focuses on in his 25 reasons to oppose hate crime legislations are homosexuals and transgender people. That's right, all 25 reasons have to do with what the doctor considers to be bad things that will happen if homosexual and transgender people are protected by hate crime laws. So what? So what? Does that mean that everybody else is wrong for their different reasonings? If he focuses on a specific example, is he the representative of all anti-hate crime legislation crowds? I've never heard of this guy. Of course he isn't. I'm anti-hate crime legislation, so I wonder, maybe I should actually take a look. Let's see if I can get there. Okay, 25 reasons to oppose hate crime by the doctor. Large fines and eventually jail time for anyone who publicly speaks out against homosexual activity or transgenderism, even as a minister, if the state determines that one's message arouses people to hate homosexual and transgendered persons. This includes messages that cite scripture to refer to studies that show higher incidences of promiscuity and disease among homosexually active men. So he is essentially saying that if you speak out against homosexual activity or transgenderism as a minister or as a religious leader, and the state determines that the message arouses people to hate homosexual or transgendered persons, that's an interesting distinction to make, that the first clause does not talk about persons, but actually talks about the act. And then here it transfers to the persons, which I presume that if this is truly someone who studies the New Testament, that this person would make this distinction intentionally. This includes messages that cite scripture. In other words, if you quote the Bible and the Bible says something that is anti-homosexual, in other words, you are exercising your freedom of religion, or refer to studies that show higher incidences of promiscuity and diseases among homosexually active men. Essentially, you look at something where it talks about, you show a statistic. Even if it's not your own statistic, it's a crime. That's not very freedom of speech, if you ask me. Has this person actually told people to hate homosexual or transgendered persons? According to the premise, no. And you get large fines and jail time for, as this doctor says, simply showing hate without actually hurting anyone or doing anything like that. And you get arrested. Are you sure you're criticizing the right article? Because if your position is that hate itself shouldn't be punished, and that what should be punished is actual acts that are linked with hate, then why would you not be on this guy's side in saying that if they're just saying something and they're not actually telling people to be violent against homosexuals or transgenders? So they're not being threatening, they're not telling people to go out and kill gays, that should be a crime? Then why aren't you on his side on this? But maybe there's another issue in here that disgusts you. Suspension without pay from one's place of employment, even outright termination if one declares in any way one's opposition to homosexual practice or transgenderism, even if, as a white-collar employee, one makes such a declaration in a letter to an editor outside the domain of a workplace. Moreover, one will have to pay the court costs of his persecutors. In other words, you say your opinion somewhere, and somebody sues you, and you have to pay for the person that is suing you, simply because you made a remark that some people would consider a hate crime. Now, let's actually find out what kinds of remarks are considered hate crimes. So I went to criminaldefenselawyer.com as a resource here, and we see that bias, or as FBI calls it, element of bias. And by the way, the author is a legal person, Didier, did graduate from law school and has practiced. So this is someone who, in a court of law, would be considered an expert. Says that aside from the defendant's own statements, such as the defendant says, "Yes, I am a racist." Oops, I just said it. Please don't take me out of context. Hey, defendant's membership in a group that espouses hatred for certain groups, such as a black separatist group or an online chat group that opposes homosexuality. Now, let me be clear here that this in itself, from a logical standpoint, does not indicate causality in the sense that you, let's say you're a member of the KKK, or you go on the Daily Stormer or your Stormfront, and you kill a Jew, for example. But maybe this doesn't actually show that there's a causality that you kill the Jew because you're in the KKK. Because what if you also happen to be a mugger and you decide to mug the Jew, and you kill him because you actually want his money, but your crime is upped to a hate crime simply because you were a member of a KKK, even though you maybe didn't even know that person was Jewish. So you didn't even have a specific reason to hate that person. You murdered a person, and then after the fact, you find out that that person was a Jew, and then in the court of law, they say, well, you're a member of a KKK, so your crime goes up. Now, of course, I personally don't approve of the KKK or Stormfront or attacks on Jews. I don't approve of any of that. But it's got to be said that if the motivations matter, this doesn't actually show the actual motivation. Defendant's possession of literature or symbols associated with bias, such as Nazi memorabilia or anti-Semitic texts. Anti-Semitic texts, let's say you like to study, let's say you are an anti-racist, and because of that, you have racist texts so that you can study your opposition. Uh-oh, here we go. Or let's say you like collecting World War II memorabilia, and you've got a few swastikas. You've got the armband. You've got a uniform with a swastika on it. And does that show causality? Does that show intent? I don't think it does. Defendant's own writings. Now, own writings, I would qualify that as maybe saying, yeah, kill all the blacks or something like that. Well, this video is not getting monetized. This video, there's no way it's getting monetized. Graffiti or tattoos, I think it really depends on what's on that, but still, I'm opposed to hate crime legislation in the first place, so it doesn't matter to me anyway. But if I were in favor of it, I would have to say that it really, in order to determine intent, it would really have to depend on what's written. As in saying, I want to kill so-and-so because of X biased reason, signed your name. There you go. That would be the specific circumstance. The use of biased slurs or graffiti during or at the site of a crime. Now, it's got to be said that I know that a lot of people use racial slurs who don't actually harbor specific hate towards individuals of that race, but use them situationally. Let's say in a fight against someone, they want to pick on the person, and they see the race, and that's what they use. And they actually, the only reason they're using a racial slur is because they want to demean the person, and not because they actually want to demean the race. There you go. There's another example of how that does not necessarily prove from a logical standpoint that that is the intent. The date of the incident, if it coincides with a significant holiday or anniversary, and other hate crimes committed by defendant. Now, I have to say that none of these, besides the defendant's own statements and some of writings, graffitis, or tattoos, for me, would logically prove this, which for me means that the law doesn't really care about proving 100% that this person is a racist or a sexist or etc., and therefore establishing a hate crime. And logically as well, even if this person is a sexist, that doesn't necessarily mean that this person beat up someone simply because of that person's sex. Because there are many reasons why people beat up each other, and bias is not necessarily the motivation, even if the person has the bias. And this is the problem that I have with this, is that it's almost impossible to prove that hate crime occurred. It's almost impossible. Anyway, all these pages I'm going to have links in the description for, so look forward to that. Okay, let's actually see if there's anything in parochial schools being required to accept gay prom dates and gay clubs. In other words, people doing things that are against their own religion. Making it illegal for members of mental health professions to counsel persons against a homosexual life. Now, if you are in a mental health profession, then you obviously are going to counsel people against things that you believe are morally wrong, such as murder, rape, theft, such things. And if you are someone who believes from a Christian standpoint that homosexuality is wrong from a moral absolute, then it would be inconsistent not to encourage people not to be homosexual. That would be morally inconsistent and hypocritical. Just like for any other religion, if you believe something were wrong from a moral absolute standpoint, it would be inconsistent not to denounce it whenever you see it. It would be inconsistent. So it really is something that depends on perspective, where you have to say that if you're going to attack this specific point, you have to go after the base of that. And if the base of that is that religion, then you have to specifically go after the religion if you want, or at least their interpretation of religion, if you want to disprove it. If you want them to change their mind, because otherwise you're telling them to do something that they believe is inconsistent and morally wrong from their perspective. So you have to always see that not only you have to be consistent, but when other people are inconsistent, you have to look at that as well. Not saying that you have to go after everyone that's out there. No, because if I did that, I wouldn't ever make any other types of videos, because there are a lot of people that I disagree with. There are a lot of reasons that people give for opposing hate crime laws, but for many of these people, the reason goes much deeper. It's usually pretty hard to get to real reasons, ultimate reasons, but in this case, it's not. In this case, it's unclear. It's unclear, okay? The real reason, the ultimate reason is unclear. Unfortunately, the real reason that some people oppose hate crime laws is, but it's unclear, that they themselves are part of the hate. And here is the problem with this article. Any of the other stuff, you think, well, maybe I'll give you the benefit of a doubt. This is your perspective after all. But this part really shows me that you don't care about convincing other people not to oppose hate crime legislation. That doesn't seem to... Now, this is just an inference. I'm not saying that this is the absolute perspective. Because if you look at this, the real reason that some people oppose hate crime laws... Now, the real question is, who are these some people? Is that they themselves are part of the hate. Some people oppose hate crime laws. Does this mean all people who oppose hate crime laws, as in the some people, are the people who oppose hate crime laws? Because in that sense, you're having a real problem here, because you're not going to connect with the other people, because you're saying that I don't care what you think. I don't care who you are. You're a hater. That's what essentially is here, and another collectivist issue. But that's why I like to treat people as individuals. But the problem is that this is, of course, vague, so you could interpret it as some people who oppose hate crime laws oppose them because they themselves are part of the hate. Or you could say some people oppose hate crime laws, and those people are part of the hate. Those are two different ways to interpret that sentence. And I'm not going to say that it's one or the other, but I'm saying that, again, this is a slippery slope, because you could either be saying that some people do it because they're hateful, in which case, what about the rest? Or you could be saying that they're all hateful, and these are some people. In which case, where's the proof? Unless you intend to say that this is the proof, because it doesn't actually prove to me that any of these people are hateful, except for maybe the people that explicitly say, oh, I hate you because you're gay. It's sad, all right? And that's my opinion. Now, again, if you have a different opinion, please comment. If you have a different take that I might be missing, please comment. If you think that I'm absolutely wrong and that this is tearing you up on the inside, please comment. I will not treat you in a rude manner. For example, Dr. Joe here, Dr. Joe Wenke or Winke, depending on the linguistic origin. I respect you. I respect your opinion, but I have to say that I disagree. And I have stated the reasons that I disagree. And anyone else that comments and disagrees with me, I respect you, and because I respect you, I will read your comment, unless this video gets 1 million comments, in which case I can't read your comment. All your comments. I will read some of them, though. I respect you, and I will make an attempt to read your comment and an attempt to understand what you're trying to say and where you're trying to come from, and then I will tell you, maybe I agree, maybe I disagree, but let's all agree that we shouldn't hate each other. Okay? I think that's the problem that in a lot of society, where people say, you disagree with me, therefore I hate you, or you're different than me, therefore I hate you, or I think that you hate people, therefore I hate you. Let's have none of that in this comment section. Let's have it clean, relaxing perhaps, respectful, friendly even, cordial. Let's not go to the people that say we have to tear everybody apart. Don't tear apart the person, tear apart the argument, tear apart the premises. You can disagree with the conclusions, but please don't attack the people. The people, they're people too, okay? Don't attack the people. Leave the people alone. And I suppose that's all I have to say. Thank you all for watching. If this was a bit long-winded, maybe I got a bit too theological at some point in there, please say so. And I will be seeing you all next time on Awiltos. Over and out.